Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Finding Your Financial Voice podcast with me, your host, Anita R Johnson. The mission of this podcast is always to give you sound financial tips that you can implement immediately, allowing you to leave a legacy for your family. We have a great show today, and welcome to our listeners, our return listeners, our listeners who are just listening, just finding us wherever you found us at. Make sure that you send me an email at anitafinancialbehaviors@gmail.com, or give us a call. Let us know where you heard this podcast, on which platform, whether it be Spotify, Buzzsprout, any of those things. Tell me where you, so that we'll know where you are and where you are in the country, or where you are outside the country, because we do have some listeners outside the country. So we want outside the United States, I should say. And so thank you so much. This is season 5, episode 2. So thank you so much for listening to us for the last 5 seasons. We probably have one more episode before we take a break and go into season number 6. And we got some exciting stuff that's going to happen in 2023. I can barely wait and contain myself to let you know what's going to happen with this podcast in 2023. But I'm just going to wait and let you check it out. But we got a great show today. We got a special guest. And if you saw the headlines, we're going to be doing a little panel discussion here pretty soon about the financial miseducation of the Negro. And I have my partner he and I are going to be leading this discussion in February. So look for the upcoming events that are going to be happening on Anita R Johnson Financial Behaviors page, on the Facebook page, and on the LinkedIn page that tells you about this panel discussion that we're going to be having. And I'm going to allow him to give a little update on his bio and what he does, and how he and I, we'll talk, but how he and I came up with this panel discussion that we want to have, because we really want to be able to educate people on finances. We're not talking about no financial literacy. We're not talking about any of that. We really want to talk about how we have been miseducated when it's come to finances. And so his name is Stephen. And so Stephen, how you doing today?
I'm great, Anita. This is a wonderful opportunity, and I appreciate you inviting me on to your podcast. So I'm excited.
I'm excited to have met you, and that we are going to be doing this panel discussion. What I want you to do, though, is I want you to take a few minutes to tell about yourself and your business. And you also, at the end of the podcast, you'll be able to give out your contact information, where you are, and maybe even talk about some things that you're doing solo without me, which is the panel discussion, that you might want to invite people to come here, see, speak, give out your cards, whatever it is that you do, marketing, whatever that you do, so that you can educate people on finance. So just give us a little bit of that.
Oh, man, I appreciate that. I am Stephen LaBroi of the LaBroi Insurance Group. Just the mission of our company, we're nationwide. That means we're licensed in well over 40 states to give strategic information on customizing that contract called life insurance. They customizing it, that means that we help you know what to ask for when it comes to life insurance. We discovered and done the historical background on why life insurance has not been so well received and so well understood by cultures of color. And in that regard, it's based on the fact that this particular contract is money. It's money that you use while you're living, and money that can be passed on to the next generation. But if you don't know what to ask for in that particular contract, you will get what is given to you. So
I like
our
that.
company aspect of life, we call it a human equity line of credit. We put you in position to truly benefit and create the type of contract that's going to go from generation to generation.
I love
That's
it. I absolutely love it.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm reading your bio, and one of the things it says about your company, a nationwide independent life insurance and retirement strategy firm. I love that. Whose
Yes.
mission is to close the wealth gap and help create a strong cash flow assets for all your clients. That is a great mission. That's a great mission. And you just gave us a little kind of an insight of how life insurance can be used. As we talk about the miseducation, tell us about how the miseducation of life insurance has plagued the community.
Well, it's very, very apparent when I talk to people because they will tell you what their parents had or didn't have, what their
Mm-hmm.
grandparents had or didn't have, or
Mm-hmm.
what their great grandparents had or didn't have. That means that this is a generational misnomer that if we date it backwards, dates backwards into the 1800s.
Oh
If
wow.
that's the case, and we really pay attention to that, in the 1800s, there was no education when it comes to money as it
Mm-hmm.
relates to cultures of color.
Mm-hmm.
Because as one of my clients or contemporaries said to me in talking about this, they said, we were the money. We were the money. And that hit hard when I began to do the homework on this particular genre. And, as you know, money management is at the basis of what we discuss as we talk about it all the
Mm-hmm.
time, Anita, because if you don't understand how to manage your money when it gets in your hands, then things that you buy, things that you invest in, things that are focused for you and your family will never come to fruition because you're not intentional in terms of building those particular foundations and those assets. See, if we build assets and minimize liabilities with the definition of net worth being asset minus liability, we will have way more assets than we have liabilities. That means our net worth will be higher and we will always have access to cash flow.
I
It's
love
just that simple.
it.
And so it's just a matter of understanding that at its core, at its core.
Correct.
And when you
Correct.
understand it at its core, then you begin to put this in place for your money management, for you, for your family. You teach your children young so that by the time they reach your age, they're already indoctrinated. They're doing the same thing. Though that means they'll translate it to their children. And that's what becomes generational educational wealth.
Oh boy.
And it won't be miseducation anymore. Let's get with it. Let's get
Yeah,
with it.
you and I talked about this generational wealth. We talked about this before. I like that generational educational wealth. I think and we also talked about asset allocations too. I like those terms because those are positive terms and people can understand, some people can understand that. And I think you're right about indoctrinating the generation to understand how that money management, how assets and how to be intentional and how to build assets so that our net worth will be positive. There's a study, and I'm pretty sure it's still in effect, that the average African American woman, Black woman, in her 25, 30, 35, her average net worth is $5. And that is actually an improvement from when it was $1. We have a mission or an intention to tell people or tell our community that they don't have to have a $5 a net worth, they or $1 net worth. They can do much better than, and they should be doing much better than their parents or their grandparents before or great grandparents.
Yes. Yes. I love that.
Great. Yes.
We have to know that income is not
Not net
wealth.
worth. Mhm.
Income drives wealth. So we got to create a formula so that as we matriculate through this thing called life, that we're building wealth, buying assets, and the assets themselves will basically take care of us and will do all the things necessary to manage our lives, to manage our children's lives, to manage ourselves into a retirement phase, which doesn't mean age. It means when you're free. When your assets overtake your liabilities, you're free.
Yeah, yeah,
And
true,
at whatever
true.
age you want that to be.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's what, you and I talk about on a regular basis. That's why
yeah.
we're here today. And I'm so glad that we met. And it's been a joy. And I'm hoping that we can continue to
Oh,
teach
definitely. Teach.
people. That's right.
Yeah, I often tell people, often tell folks that I have met, and I don't know if I shared this with you, that I met a person who was when I met him, he was 59 and he was retired. And I said to him, "How did you do this? How you get to be retired at 59?" He said, "I went to work to retire."
Mm, How about that?
Right? He said, "I
I
went to
love it.
work to retire." And
Intentional.
so a lot of us don't even think about retirement when we whether we're self-employed or whether we are working for someone or whatever our game may be, right? We don't we like, okay, well, I'm gonna get my 20, 25 years in, 30 years, whatever that might be. We never think about retiring early and how that looks and what sacrifices or what education we need to make that happen. And this panel discussion that you and I are going to have in February, and I'm going to get the date here pretty soon so people can know that date and know that we're going to be talking about that. Is this something, is that part, maybe part of the conversation we need to be having with them about, okay, just because somebody says we need to work for 20, 25 years, 30 years, and then retire, is that still up to date, or should we be looking at, is that a miseducation of our people?
I think it is. I think
Mhm.
it's miseducated primarily because if we think about again what retirement is, it's really
Mm.
taking back control of your time.
Mhm, mhm,
When we
mhm,
start off, we don't really have much. When we start as young, new minted employees or entrepreneurs or whatever it takes for us to manage our lives. But when you get to a point where your assets overtake your liabilities, you're really taking back control of your time. And
mm, mm.
at that point, it's not retirement when how you and I think about it or others think about it traditionally. What it is it puts you in a position to decide, what
Mm.
do you want to do? Do you want to work today? Do you not want to work
Yeah,
today?
that makes sense.
Do you follow your dream, your passion? I always ask clients when I get to a point when we talk about retirement is, what did you dream about as a little boy or a little girl? I
Mm.
want to take you back into that context because we all had dreams of something. Even in the most, crazy situations, we dreamed of being something or doing something.
Mm, mm,
If
mm.
that's the case, once we get to that quote unquote retirement stage where we take our time back and possibly we're not doing what we loved and what we wanted to do, a lot of people do. But once we
Mhm,
get to that stage, then we can start to think about the things we dreamed about because we've taken our time back
mm.
and we
Interesting.
created leverage. And that's kind of how I help people come to that conclusion because think about it. Our habits drive our narrative. And if you're used to working someplace for 15, 20 years, you don't know how to get off that roller coaster.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Unless they stop the ride, kick you off, you get to the point where you're exhausted and you jump off. All of these I've heard in dealing with people. It may be an analogy about the roller coaster, but it happens.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And if we don't give it some intention and focus, then we're just going to let this ride take us down this road that we may not necessarily want it to take us. And that
Mhm,
is about intention, money management, building assets, creating some realities that you and I talk about on a regular basis. And we're going to help change some of this for people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, we have 2 points that we have been miseducated. I know there's more than two that we as a community have been miseducated on. That is life insurance and retirement. What can be a third thing that we have had miseducation on, financial miseducation on?
Just what are assets truly? What are
Okay.
the asset classes? See, we're
What?
usually given the reason why I think you and I think financial literacy is a misnomer
Mm-hmm.
is because we're usually given products and services, and they call that literacy.
Mm-hmm.
We're not given strategy or goals and how to manage our day to day and what our cash flow is. We're not given what I call the ABCs.
Right.
So if we're taught asset classes and we accumulate them over time, because some people do, and you've heard of families who've accumulated land. You've heard of families
Mm-hmm.
who buy art, who are into
Mm-hmm.
collecting art heavily. You hear about families who understand stocks. If we can teach asset classes, all of them, real estate, life insurance, artwork, stocks and bonds, gold and silver, even cryptocurrency these days is an asset class, and teach people to use a part of their income that's disposable and learning their risk tolerance, we can literally have them use those funds to buy these assets that will then be the foundation of control and leverage in these different economies that we are faced with that we can't do anything about. Nobody expected a pandemic.
Nope. And and some people wasn't ready for it.
That's
And
right.
That conversation, I think I had that conversation with myself when they started talking about the pandemic and closing down and this and that. I said, what a great opportunity for me. It wasn't, oh my gosh, the pandemic. It was like, okay, now we really gonna be able to teach people how to manage, educate people. I shouldn't say teach, but teach how to manage, educate them on managing. Because if this happens again, some people just not gonna make it. They just not gonna make it.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
I use the analogy.
They're gonna be jumping out of windows.
I use the example often. If you lived in a hurricane area in this country, and they tell you hurricanes are going to happen every year, should you be prepared and have a little fund to the side for evacuation potential?
Yep.
Or should you just hope that you can ride it out? I mean,
Yep.
and I don't want to pick on the places where the hurricanes are, because this happens, and some people just are not able to be prepared.
Right.
But at
Right.
the end of the day, we have events in our lives that we cannot control. There are events, there are economic events, there's political events when the politicians change and they change directions on the laws and the things that affect us. There's the weather, which people don't want to say that there's global warming, and that's fine if that's your position. But at the same time, the weather, what about in Texas where it was freezing for almost a month and, the utility system was imperiled and nobody was ready for it? How are you ready to be proactive for these types of things instead of reactive? We gotta, if we lived a certain amount of time in this world, we should be proactive on certain things that have happened in the past.
Wow, this is a great conversation that we're having. And, if you want to continue to have this conversation, we want to invite you to our panel discussion that's going to happen February the 25th. You'll probably be seeing 2023, and you'll probably be seeing some marketing material coming out. And of course, Steve and I will be on that panel. There may be some other invited guests. We will let you know those invited guests, but this is preliminary of what we're going to be talking about: the financial miseducation of the Negro. And he just brought out like 3 great points. Some of the miseducation: life insurance, retirement, and asset classes. And I'm sure there's so many others. You and I have talked so many times about so many things about financial education. I am not into financial literacy because I'm into financial education. And you put it good about the strategies and the goals, right? That should be what, when I see financial literacy, we're talking about, oh, get your credit straight. Okay.
That's all.
But I mean, like, okay, really? And not that I don't believe in it or I don't trust in it. And yeah, financial credit does make the world go round. But sometimes if you got cash outweighs credit any day. Right? So, but that's a whole different conversation.
Important that you know how to customize those contracts so that you can ask for the things that are going to be important to you and your family.
I love it. February 25th, 2023 is when we're having this wonderful panel discussion, and it's the financial miseducation of the Negro. And we're going to be talking about some of the miseducation or some of the things that we think that have been plaguing our community for many, many years. And according to Steve, if you heard earlier, life insurance 1800s, right? So it just didn't help. This just didn't start with your great grandmother or your great grandfather or the insurance guy coming sitting on the porch and taking the money for the life insurance and not having enough life insurance once your family comes with the tragedy of death, and not having enough because it just wasn't put into the right place. It started way back in the 1800s. Retirement, right? When did that, when did it say that? Where did it say in what book that we had to wait till it was 25, 30 years, work all the way till we almost 60, 65, 70, and then our life expectancy is only 82 till 82, 85, right? And then so we only have so many years to live. And then asset classes. Who said that just having a home is the only thing that we need to have in an asset class? How do we buy art? How do we buy land? How do we buy vintage cars? How do we purchase? How do we purchase? And what do we do with them as we are purchasing these different assets? How do we pass it to the next generation? Or do we pass it to the next generation? So, Stephen, is there anything else that just one more point? Because the conversation is so good, but I don't want to give all our points away because we want people.
I know. I'm fired up. I
got excited now, but because we want people to come to the panel discussion because they have an opportunity to ask us questions and see us and make a point. Now, this will be a Zoom call. Steve is in one part of the country and I'm in another part of the country. So we'll come together on a Zoom call, and you'll be able to see us and talk with us and ask us questions about, well, should I be doing X, Y, Z? Now, we can't tell you how to do or what to do. We can only give you overall advice because we won't know your financial situation. What we're doing is basically trying to give you some thought process, something to think about so that you can go back and talk with your finance, or even with Steve, because he just said that he is licensed in 40 states. Am I right about that, Steve?
Oh, yeah, 40
states, right?
US.
That's right. Yes. I hope California is one of them.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Lots of clients in Cali.
Not surprising. Yes. Okay. So one more point before we leave. One more point, Steve.
Well, I just want people to understand simply, we're not talking about we've been totally miseducated. What we're talking about is that there have been all kinds of issues from as early as after slavery till now that have plagued us to become that what we have been told is this wealth gap. Everybody sees that, and it's a psychological effect in the propaganda that's on the news. The wealth gap is widening between the races. And we know that there are people who have built fortunes and made money, in our community. But they take an aggregate number, a general number, and they look at it overall. But here's the deal. We have not been exposed. There are things that have been kept from us. There are things that are germane to the demographic, to our geographics, where we live. And we just want to bring light to that, because going forward, this information is available, but we have to put it in a format so that all our families are beginning to think about how to set goals within the family, that those goals are not just for one generation, but they're for 3 to 4 generations, and that you're comfortable with understanding all the distractions that are financially setting in front of us, the advertising, all the pulling of us during Christmas and all these holidays, that we're going to stay focused on building these foundations, so then we can partake in certain things and close the wealth gap. Like a lot of these young people are buying back the block, so to speak, in real estate, and they're learning how to trade options and stocks. But we talk about, what do you do with all this money that you're having to pay taxes on? There's a big comprehensive piece. So please stop me, because we're gonna be getting it in February 25th. I'm so fired up about it. We might have to have 2 hours, then 3 hours. It's gonna turn into a series, because we gotta talk about it. We gotta talk about it.
I know. Well, this won't be our last conversation we have. I know something that I do every third Tuesday of the month. It used to be called Ask Me Anything questions, where Ask Me Anything, and where people can come on and ask me any question that they like. They got 2 questions. They got the first question and the follow-up question. But I have rebranded that to Money Circle, where I will have guests on. And you'll see that on LinkedIn, of course, this Tuesday coming up. And that'll be with Michelle Candy. And if you have not gotten to see Affluence Financial Fitness magazine for women, she is on the cover of that magazine, and I'm the publisher of that magazine, and great articles. And so we may have Stephen on for the month of December, maybe, depending on, or we may have him back on in January, because sometimes you guys don't pay attention to us in November or December, because like you say, Steve, Christmas, that holiday come up, we want to spend, our kids want this and we want that. And here again, I believe, we have the commercialization of these holidays, or so to speak, holidays, that gets us wrapped up in some of that stuff.
Triggers. Let's talk about them.
Yep, yeah. Definitely. Okay, well, Steve, go ahead and give the listening audience your contact information. And if you have anything coming up, and this is the month of November, and I know sometimes people listen to the podcast whenever they want to. So give them something that they can, if you're going to have something during the November, December slot, that they of 2022, that people can come to, listen to, so they'll get more information about you.
Well, definitely go to my social media. Okay. Stephen LaBroi, that's StevenLaBroi, that's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Go to the LaBroi Insurance Group, same, social media, LaBroi Insurance Group, and reach out to me directly at 202-544-6226. That's our office number. We will work with you. It takes a minute to get things up and running for you, but we will work with you to put you in a position so that you can build a foundation that will never be broken. And that is important for us. That's why we've come together. That's why we're preparing for this great program coming in February. And I am so blessed to be here today, Anita. And thank you again.
Well, thank you. I want to ask you, is LaBroi a French name?
Yes, it is. Everybody wants to know we're from Louisiana. But we're from Gary, Indiana. The Gary, Indiana.
Okay. I was getting ready to say New Orleans.
It's always an anomaly, but that's okay. I think it was part of that whole legacy that,
Yep.
In the 1900s, you didn't have to go to the courthouse to change your name. I think our great granddad just changed his name.
Just change it anyway.
Right. We proud of it.
Yeah, I man.
We like
somebody out there listening want to ask that question.
That's right. Love them all. That's right.
I love it. Well, I want to thank you for listening for all our listeners is listening, Finding Your Financial Voice podcast. And I'm your host, of course, where we give sound financial tips to implement immediately. And our special guest, definitely, we want to thank Mr. Stephen for coming in and being our special guest today. And remember, that date is February 25th, 2023. And make sure that you attach to Stephen's page, to my page, phone number, because we'll be doing some great marketing for this, and it will be a Zoom call. I know he and I will be on the panel. We may have one more guest, maybe two at the most, so that we can answer all your questions, or answer nearly all your questions anyway. We can have a great discussion about this, about at least these three points that we've made, which is life insurance, retirement, and asset classes. And I know I want to get in, of course, the asset classes, because I've been doing a little change in my own self with art, going into art, and what should I do with the art once I accumulate the art, or accumulate whatever art pieces I am. What should I do with it? I want to know what to do with it. So I might sit in the audience and ask Stephen, what should I do with it? So thank you so much for coming. And we are here for you. Make sure you can email me at anitafinancialbehaviorist@gmail.com. Check out my pages on Facebook, which is Anita Johnson Financial Behaviorist, and of course, Anita Johnson on LinkedIn. So thank you so much, Stephen. We definitely will be getting back to you. And thank you for listening, and thank you to our listening audience.